Many thanks for joining me on Off the Press this morning, the program where we dissect the national dailies and make sense of it. And with me this morning in the studio to dissect and, of course, understand the issues emanating from our dailies is Tubosun Akeju, Reputation Manager and, of course, Public Affairs Analyst.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you this morning. So there are so many stories here popping out, I can see. And up for review this morning is the Punch newspaper. We are beginning with the Punch newspaper. And it says on the front page, doctors' exodus now more alarming, says NMA. You find that on page 2, 60 doctors dump Lagos hospitals every 6 months. This is from NMA also. 700 doctors leave Nigeria annually, says first vice president. All my mates have left Nigeria. United States-based doctor is saying so, affirming what we see there on the headline. And then we see Salami Soludo panel replaces Oshibajo economic team. That's on page 26, as now displayed on your screen there. And Chad Niger herdsmen to benefit from federal government's livestock scheme. You find that also on page 42. Rivers, Niger, Benue's rise heightened. River Niger, Benue's rise heightens flood alarm. You find that on page 43 also of the Punch newspaper as displayed there. And then from the top, on the top bottom, we have a picture stories there of the president and the envoy from South Africa. South Africa apologizes for xenophobic attacks. Envoy meets President Buhari on page 42. Now, APC reacts as tribunal upholds Makinde's election on page 12. Singer Dami Crane arraigned for threat to life. Policeman, 6 others die in Lagos Osun Rivers crashes. You find that on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper as displayed there on your screen. And then 5 UTME candidates face prosecution for falsifying scores. That's very serious. You find that on page 43. Now, Tubosun, where do we begin this morning?
I think we should talk first about the exodus of the doctors. I'm surprised NMA is just saying it's more alarming. While I agree that, the health sector in Nigeria is facing a major problem, the doctors, the issue with the doctors is a bit unique because they're not the only ones trying to leave Nigeria. I think that on average, Nigeria at this
wants
moment
to escape,
wants to get another passport or wants to leave the country. And it shows that people are actually losing faith in the entity called Nigeria. But the doctors is worse because, number one, not only do we have a shortage of supplies of doctors in Nigeria, the few that we have are now leaving the country. And to speak on the side of the doctors, because I have a couple of them as friends, is the fact that, medical practitioners are subjected to a bit of mental stress that a lot of people, a lot of them don't even talk about, because when you treat a patient, sometimes you can get a bit attached to the case of that patient, and so when the patient dies, it's very painful. And when the patient dies from a situation that by your profession that was avoidable, but there was a time I read something on Twitter about a patient that died because someone locked the room where they could have taken something to save the life of the patient, and because the person had gone home, and those doctors continue to live with that trauma. So while a lot of them are passionate about what they do, they still have a bit of passion for their country, but unfortunately the environment is not conducive. So it's not enough, for NME to start to shout about the fact that they are leaving, because they will continue to leave until something significant is done about the health sector, until the welfare conditions, the compensations for doctors, are more compelling. You see people before now, professional courses in school was an assurance that when you get out of school, you get a good paying job. The case is that's not the case anymore.
Sadly,
in Nigeria. So a lot of these people are like, I want to get out of this country to go and get somewhere. So I mean, the 700 doctors, I saw the numbers I saw online yesterday, only to UK was more than 700.
That's
only
sad.
to UK was way more than 700, annually. And I think that we have a big problem on our hands, because if the middle income earners and the professional earners are leaving our country and going to another place, then in the next 5 to 10 years, then we're going to have a debt of good hands to even work and develop and help us create a GDP, you know, that that is enviable in a country like Nigeria.
Yeah, and I also think that this is good because you recall that at some point, you know,
the former minister of
Chris Ngige was heard saying that, oh, we have so many doctors, and if they want to leave, but so it's good again. It's a good thing that this is in the fore. So we know
at least we've identified it as a problem, and then we take it up from there.
All right. I hope we take it up from there. And so, what are your thoughts now? South Africa is apologizing for the xenophobic attack.
I'm not sure what the apology is about, because in another breath, some of the officials have said that Nigeria was overreacting, and I'm surprised. You see, it also goes back to show how much value, or perceived value, the Nigerian life is, because if you kill just one single citizen of the United States of America, you will know that the United States of America is not overreacting. So while, you know, the apology is a step in the right direction, about over a week after we've had this situation, I think
it long overdue? It's
long overdue. I'm not sure about the sincerity of the apology, and I still strongly believe that what is going on, again, I mean, I like to go to the root cause of issues. The problem is not only in South Africa. I read a post on Twitter, again, over the weekend, and it was a bit worrying. And someone had said that, he or she went to give a presentation somewhere in a school in the US, and the whole faculty had, you know, had Nigerians on it. That Nigerians seems to always move somewhere and, you know, take over that space. And you think that the only problem we have is in South Africa. No, we have the same issue in places like Ghana. You know, we have the same issue in Kenya. I've seen videos on social media where Kenyans were complaining about the fact that Nigerians, you know, are a bit domineering. It goes to show that, and this is what I say jokingly with my friends, to say that a lot of the things that other countries are going through now, Nigerians have gone through it in the 90s. We've had our fair share of difficulty. So we've become an extra resilient people. So anywhere we find ourselves, you know, we go full throttle, and that's why everybody seems like, why these people be aggressive and all of that.
Want to survive.
Exactly. We are just very, you know, we go very hard. You know, so I think what this is saying to us as a people is that there's a need for us to look inward, develop the Nigerian space so well that other people don't start to see us as a threat, because they know that these people have a second redress. Like, if you don't want them in your country, they'll go back to their country and do well for themselves.
And they will be just fine.
Yes, and they will be just fine. I think that one of the reasons why Nigerians are being treated the way they are, you know, we're treated, is because it seemed to appear like going back home is worse. So the apology from South Africa is a step in the right direction, but I think that something more definitely has to be done so that this xenophobic attack will not happen again, and so that there is, because there also seems to be a bit of a political gain for the South African politicians in supporting the South African people to say that, oh, the Nigerians are taking our jobs, they are doing this. So South Africa must on its own go on a drive to reorientate their people about the importance of having foreigners and how to manage foreigners, while Nigeria back at home must also treat itself to ensure that, you know, the thing on the mind of an average Nigerian is not to get out of the country to look for, you know, a greener pasture. Because it seems like the grass is actually greener on the other side.
I mean, I tend to agree with you, you know, with, you know, what you've just said. If we get our acts together as a nation, probably would not be in some of the situation. I mean, one of the things that an analyst said here on Monday or last week was, these returnees coming back, it actually looks like from fry pan to fire, sadly, you know. And then you wonder, where's the old saying of no place like home, if that's the situation. So I agree, if we get our ass together, it will be a good place and safe place.
That's it.
All right, so any other?
I think one last one from the Punch will be the direct remittance to Nigeria rising by 137%, you know, in the first 7 months of 2019. While you would say that, you know, if you compare that remittance to last year, you could say because we were preparing for the elections last year, there might have been a bit of withdrawal from, because these remittances are not just domestic, they're both the business and, you know, domestic. But 137 is significant, percent increase is significant. I'm glad to see that. I think that the lesson and what is very important for us to take out of this is the fact that the Nigerian culture, the African culture as a whole, has become more attractive on the global scene. And it's very important for us, you know, to take advantage of this wave, because it will move again. The Nigerian entertainment and media space is the fastest growing in the world at the moment, and I say it all the time in the course of my work, that one of the evidences, which is very, very strong, is the fact that Nigeria had almost 5 artists on the Lion King's album by Beyonce. It goes to show how much of our music they really like.
Appreciation.
And if you go also to talk about the Nigerian attire, you know, you see even people, influencers like TD Jakes, you know, and a lot of people now, they wear the Nigerian attire on and on, you know, without apologies. And I was speaking to a tailor who was saying that, he suddenly noticed that there's been an increase in demand for his clothes from the US. And he used to have a lot of that from the UK. Well, because the UK has a lot of Nigerian community. But it's from the US, because when you see influencers and big people like this, or Nigerians who now proudly wear this thing, has become globally acceptable. My point here is that if we do not take advantage of this, the global companies are going to sit wherever they are and milk this to the very last, and before you know, we are holding the shorter end of the stick again. So these remittances, we should be happy about it, but we should ensure that we, you know, take advantage of it as quickly as possible, so that we can maximize it for economic gain.
Thank you very much. Great thoughts there. And so we'll move now very quickly, in the interest of time, to the Guardian newspaper, and it says, South Africa begs an exit of Nigerians hurts economy. Okay, and we'll discuss compensation on October the 3rd, rather, says Ramaphosa. I believe that's when our own president will join him. Obasanjo wants xenophobic attacks reported to AU, and 319 more Nigerians to return to Lagos today. You'll find that on the front page, as displayed there on your screens of the Guardian newspaper. And to the left, it says, Labour and FG meeting on minimum wage implementation deadlocked again. So there's no agreement yet. They say they're going to brief the public of what will be their next line of action. The minister blames stagnant growth on unimplemented NESG reports. That's on page 7 of the Guardian newspaper. And telecoms operators rectify 6.7 million of 9.2 million irregular mobile lines. That news is on page 7. And Igbo take alleged marginalization by federal government to the United Nations. You find that also on page 8. And EU moves to give goods from Nigeria and others visibility, just like what you're saying. Exactly. So thankfully they are thinking ahead, so to speak. So you find that also on page 9. So which shall we begin with?
I'll talk a bit about the minimum wage.
Okay, there's no agreement
issue. I have a bit of a different opinion to the issue of minimum wage.
Why so?
I think that we have, I mean, there's no cry when the head is off, but it's important to also properly understand our problem to be able to give proper solutions to it.
Okay.
I think that at the stage the country is, what the union leaders should be fighting for are the social amenities that will make life easier for the average Nigerian, and not the minimum wage. Because the same, by increasing the take home of the average worker in the Nigerian workspace, what you've increased is the spending power, which is not for how many people. What's the ratio of the people employed by Nigerian governments at both states, local governments, and state level compared to those who are not employed by governments? But one thing that we can all share, a 21st century transport infrastructure. We can all share a 21st century health facility around. Maybe you work for government or you don't work for government.
That's correct.
We can all enjoy power. But I understand that the Labour has gone this route because people like the government has refused to reduce its over-bloated size. The legislators have refused to reduce how much they earn. But I don't think that two wrongs makes a right.
That's correct.
I think that one of the reasons the government have given for increasing VAT is because of this minimum wage. So what we're doing is we're just going down the wrong road. It will lead us nowhere. So, going in the right direction is better than speed. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Why speed is important, but if you're moving at a fast, speed in the wrong direction, you're not going to get to the desired destination. Right now, I think what the Labour leaders should be fighting for are those social amenities, and they are not so big. We need good roads. We all don't have to put our cars on the road. We need good hospitals. We don't have to pay a ham and a leg, to be in good hospitals. And that is my opinion about the minimum wage thing. I'm not sure this country can afford that new minimum wage. I think that we are further, going in. We're going to further go into major problems unless we find a way to significantly increase our revenue and will significantly increase infrastructure development else. That increase in minimum wage in the next 5 years, we're going to be asking for more again.
Tangible.
It won't amount to anything.
I was just going to say, again, because in the news they said they are going to inform the public what's the next line of action. Maybe, let me just say, it could be, again, another industrial strike. But does all of this strike, again, does it even give answers? Does it amount to anything?
I'm quite sure that if they should go on any strike right now, it will be less effective and they will lose their bargaining power. I mean, it's going to make the government, less popular, but we are becoming more informed about this issue. So it's going to be their word against us. If they are able to force the legislations to reduce their pays and benefit, if they are able to get government to reduce, their size, maybe that would be a game. Maybe that would be a game. I think that those are the things that we should fight, not this direction. I don't support that school of thought.
All right, very quickly there, please grab a copy of the Guardian newspaper and get all of this. And then as we move now to Vanguard, up next for review is the Vanguard newspaper, and it says here, Ramaphosa apologizes. That's the big story there, and we see the picture story of South African envoy at Aso Rock Villa, and it says, top there, Soludo, Rwani, and Doyin Salami make new Economic Advisory Council. Please find that on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Mugabe was the most erudite statesman I had the honor of listening to, barring former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Alfred Kissinger, says that. I don't get enough credit for my work. Singer Adekunle Gold rather says so. Please find on page 11, they're displayed on your screen, why he says so. Infractions. SEC asks investor to utilize whistleblowing policy. Oh, what happened to that whistleblowing policy again? That's on page 19. Please grab a copy. And Apapa gridlock. Sanwo-Olu reps seek approval for Badagry and Lekki seaports. Find that interesting news on page 10 as displayed on your screen there. And over 100 local government areas in 33 states affected by flood. NIHSA says so on page 35. And oil prices looking up as Yemen threatens another attack on Saudi Arabia. That's on page 9. And of this newspaper, the Vanguard newspaper. Tribunal upholds Makindi's election. Southwest PDP tells Adelabo to accept verdict. And Masari, kidnapping, banditry can be cancerous, consume Nigeria. Please find out what the if is on page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper. Your thoughts on which one?
The Economic Advisory Council. Very, very interesting team that the president signed up or announced yesterday. One of Nigeria's finest minds put them together, but it's not enough to put that team together.
Okay.
I think that the government as a whole, not the president alone, the government and as a whole, the presidency as a whole must be ready to listen to the outreach from this team. And I like the fact that, there seem to be even people that have spoken in different ways on those teams that have asked, float the Naira, the float, and I think that will bring together a lot of refined ideas when they come together. What's a bit of a concern for me is how they went about, the announcement of this Economic Advisory Council and the fact that it will be replacing the economic management team, headed by the vice president. There seemed to be something a bit fishy there because just yesterday, the vice president still had a meeting with the economic management team. And then the release went ahead to specifically say that, this Economic Advisory Council will be reporting directly to the president. I just really, like the good book says, the house divided against itself cannot stand. I just really, really hope that we're not starting to experience some frictions in that place, because at the end of the day, this Economic Advisory Council will not work in isolation, knowing that the economic management team under the vice president, however, I'd seem a bit more ceremonial than technical. And they will still, however, this Economic Advisory Council, made up of majorly people from the private sector, will still have to work with those in the public sector, ministers and the directors, for proper implementation of anything that they're advising the president to do. So, but at the end of the day, the ultimate goal here is to ensure that the Nigerian economy is growing at a rate that it needs or has the potential to grow, because we're definitely growing, below our potential, as you will see in, our conversation with Bill Gates and journalists. I think, recently talking about, the amount of money Nigeria is able to raise. But like I said, it's a step in the right direction. And
Get your best mind and then listen to your best mind
and implement what your best mind is.
Okay, that's a great one there. And so we move to the last paper here for review. Is the Nation newspaper. It says, "My wish for Nigeria, Bill Gates." Find out what that's about on page 2, as displayed there on your screen. SDGs reports inside. Wadume military police tango over trial. Reports creates row. That's on page 7. And workers for strike over minimum wage. Well, negotiation deadlocks. We talked about it already. That's on page 40. Please grab a copy of the Nation newspaper and know what it's about. And inside tribunal, Oyo APC governorship candidate's petition lacks merit. That's on page 41 of the Nation newspaper. And RMAFC asks governors for new revenue sharing plan. State insists on 42% agency to expand source of income. Buhari accepts South Africa's apology for xenophobic attacks. That's on page 7. Ramaphosa begs compensation likely. We're not sure. So it's likely to happen. May not, if I understand. And then Obasanjo seeks AU action. All right. Cuba to produce anti-diabetic drugs in Nigeria. That's on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. Please, IPOB using blackmail. Please grab a copy on page 8 and see what that's about. Now, our president has accepted the apology to Boson. Well.
So that was quite easy. But
it sounds.
I think there should have been a precondition to accepting the apology. There has to be, I believe, some, perception, they say, is reality. I expected a bit of more posturing from our president beyond what I'm seeing. I don't like the fact that it's the president that is going to South Africa
in October.
I mean, come on. At the end of the day, the economy of South Africa might be stronger than Nigeria, but Nigeria remains, a force to reckon with in Africa, and I don't think that we should, in any way, even if we're weak, there's not time to show any side of our weakness.
And so that also has offered the opportunity, so to speak, because in the earlier paper we saw of Ramaphosa saying, well, we'll talk about compensation when you come in October.
I think that should have been a precondition. There should have been an offer. Who do we compensate? How do we move around?
Let's even see tangible actions and plans towards it.
I think, what South Africa has done so far just looks like a crisis comes effect, more like damage control, not much, to rectify the main underlying problems that we have here.
That's quite unfortunate. We hope to see a better result. And please grab a copy of the Nation newspaper, and at the back and find out what the columnist is talking about, musings on the PEC's verdict and hardball, one term at a time. So please grab copies of this paper earlier talked about on the newspaper review this morning. And that's where we'll be a wrap. Thank you very much to Bosun for being with me here.
Thank you for having me.
And so we're wrapping on this note here on Off the Press. We do this again tomorrow, the same time, 8:30 here on Plus TV Africa and Off the Press, where we'll talk about national dailies and the headlines and make sense of it. I am Amaka Okoye. See you tomorrow.